Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger's supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. And if you're looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today we are doing chapter 9 of a series of theft. Something felt off, and it wasn't the clerk on the other end of the call, although Marlot was beginning to think the Revenue Bureau purposely placed the most annoyingly calm people in that position. I don't know what I can tell you, the female said. I can't give you what you want because it's impossible for the lost cards to have been sent to anyone other than the owner. I know that, Marlot replied, unable to mask his ever-growing annoyance anymore. Each time I've called to let you know it's happened, whoever answers tells me the same thing while I hold that card in. That card I can't have receive and read out the information on it. But this time, I need you to look into your system and tell me who the people whose card I can't have received were. Shouldn't you know that? She asked, if you were the ones who called in to complain. It's been happening for months now. There should be 6 in total, according to the previous person I talked to within your department. I have the last 2 names. Now I need the other ones. And I wish I could help you. How could she be this calm and jovial about this? But I can't ask the system for what lost cards that came in were sent to the wrong person because it doesn't happen. I know. You could feel the growl forming and swallowed it. Look, you don't need to ask the system anything. Pull up my account. I'm an RI, so I'm in your records. There's going to be a log for each call and notes attached to them. If the idiots bothered writing them down, the name of the people involved will be in those notes because I know I gave them. Is this a joke? A prank? Just because I'm the newest person here? She was beginning to lose that calm tone. When she spoke again, her voice was muffled by a hand over the microphone, but she was loud enough he still heard her. This isn't funny. We're supposed to be working, not wasting time with whatever this is. Is this going to be easier if your supervisor deals with this? What? No, of course not. There's no need to involve her in this. She sounded worried for someone who a second ago called this a prank. Good. Then how about you look through my previous calls? After typing and apologizing for dismissing him outright and an attempt to explain how she couldn't have known he was serious, she gave him 7 names. How had he called so often and not have it register with him or the people at the ERB? The oldest was 6 months ago. He tried to remember what he'd been doing that he could have distracted him so much. All he could think of was Trembor. He was quite the distraction. The smile died as the pain of him not being there hit. He looked at the empty desk and sighed. 9 lost cards that had been sent to him by mistake. He thanked her and ignored the follow-up messages about his opinion of the call. He should have left something positive with her being new, but he didn't feel it. Today wasn't a day when someone else's fledgling productivity rating mattered. He hadn't gotten their ID number that she hadn't been willing to give him, so he had to track down those himself. With nothing more than a name, it should have been impossible, but he also had an address, which he obtained from pulling the information on his GPS. After matching them to the name, it only took until late in the night before he had the ID numbers. The next day, as soon as he cleared his work-related task, he went back to confirming his suspicion. He hadn't thought about it when Arland had turned out to be dead. Death happened every day. And that he happened to be holding the male's lost card only looked improbable if you ignored the volume of death that occurred. And Trembor had been present. But Layden had also had a body whose lost card had passed through Marlot's hand. 2 of them still fell in the realm of the possible, if somewhat less so, but it made Marlot uncomfortable. Entering the ID number of a 3rd lost card he'd received, he found out they were also dead. Getting the time of death simply required him logging into the medical database. His RI status gave him access to that much information, at least. 2 days after his visit, 3 bodies whose hide easy to held. By lunchtime, he confirmed all of them were dead, each one killed and left to rot within days of Marlot returning the lost card. With the time between return and death going, going, getting shorter with each one, 5 days for the oldest, until the card owner had died hours, minutes, before he returned it. There was only one conclusion Marlot could draw from this. The city had another hunter, and for some reason, they'd involved Marlot. He'd entered the Revenue Bureau on his pad reflexively before he caught himself. If he told the RB, they'd put every registered investigator on this. It's what they'd done with Roxel. This hunter had been smart and killed each one in a different territory, so no one noticed the pattern. Even Marlot had missed it, and he'd been involved in this by the hunter since the start, or close to it. Why had the hunter handed him an invitation in the form of the lost cards? For the hunter to want Marlot to be part of it, they had to have interacted somehow. Was he mocking him, showing he could kill even when Marlot knew about it? Would that mean Marlot had dismissed them when they met? Did the hunter consider this personal? If so, what would their reaction be if he brought in other RIs? Anger? Would he leave for another city and put more people at risk? He shook himself. What the hunter might or might not want didn't matter here. The RB needed to be informed, and they had one in the city, and with every RI pulled into this, it would be the perfect excuse to work with Trembor again. He smiled at the memory of their first meeting during Roxel's Spree in the city. Trembor had been so strong, confident, handsome, and he'd been the only one willing to work with a shy stranger from some unknown town who'd barged into their territory following the hunter. They'd work together again to catch this one. The angry glare Trembor gave him as he ordered him off his territory mixed with a cold one as he walked away without an explanation, as if it was Marlot's fault. Had it been? Had his not following the law in the search for Nahego's killer been that much of an affront to Trembor's sense of right versus wrong? Curious, will you fix it? Actually, an abbreviation should not be in the text. Trembor's sense of right versus wrong. Marlot believed in justice over the law, but if Marlot caught this hunter, brought them to justice the right way, it would show Trembor he could do it. He could follow the law and get justice done. But first, he needed to do one thing. He replaced the RB number on his pad with one he needed to look up from the RI's registry. RI Swiftkill speaking, she said. Leyden, it's Marlot. I have some information for you. You remembered why you visited my buddy's house? I was returning their ID. I received it by mistake. You received someone else's ID? She asked, incredulous. By mistake? The system must have glitched processing the lost card. I let them know it happened. I thought the system was foolproof, she said. Does that happen often? Nothing's foolproof, Marlot replied, trying for casually disinterested. It's the only time for me. You'd have to ask the RB if it's happened. If it's happened other times. I doubt it. At least here he could count on the clerk telling her what they told him. It never happened, because now he thought they were right. He needed to keep her from realizing there were other bodies out there with a connection to hers, that no one else had. Come asking to know what he'd been doing near their bodies meant he was the only one who knew. He wanted to keep it that way. Do it right on his own to show his lie, and he could. It was also why he'd called, to keep her from scenting his lie. She sighed. So, just a coincidence, she cursed. And now I'm back to looking for a killer who's probably moved on. No, actually, that is a killer who a killer. Huh, where did I? Who's probably moved on. Back to looking for a killer who's probably, yeah, okay. That's why we love this job, he replied. I should have followed my dad's advice and become an accountant. Guaranteed rating, you love to say. Everyone needs an accountant, but I just love the chase too much. She paused and ruffled paper. Thanks for getting back to me at least. If anything else comes, I'll let you know. He disconnected and looked at the information on his screen. He needed to find the pattern. Hunters always had one. It was part of their psychology. They didn't kill to feed on the bodies, but to feed some other part of themselves. Didn't remember what the researchers said it was. He'd have to reread what had been published on hunters. It had been too long since Ruxel, and he hadn't seen a point in refreshing his memory after that. It wasn't like he'd ever expected to come across another hunter in his lifetime. So what was his pattern? Predators? He confirmed that each kill had been a predator. Was it that simple? Ruxel had gone after people who he felt wronged him, from a perceived slight to actual arguments. If this one simply went after predators, why so few kills? Predators were everywhere. Did they not need to kill as often? Or was another factor involved? Maybe they'd stolen prey from the hunter? Well, might be able to check if that was the case, unless the hunter didn't contest the kill and just took revenge. But then, why involve Marlot? They had to have met. He couldn't believe the hunter would target a stranger, even for something like this. And why warn him of his plan? That had to be what the lost cards were about. Why warn anyone? Ruxel hadn't. But he was only one hunter. How many other cases were there? He didn't remember coming across any mention of warning in the research he'd read, but he hadn't read everything out there. Another things Hunter had was methodology. Something about the process they needed to do. Ruxel had posed his bodies as what no one had figured out, but he hadn't left them where he killed them. The simplest one to check, in this case, was method of death. Had they been killed in the same way? Well, it was halfway through the medical database's firewall when had he done that? Before he realized that it wouldn't be as simple as he thought. Not if he wanted to do this legally. He sat back. What had access to his primary skill, his ability to get into just about any database he wanted, this would be a lot more complicated. Layden's body had a broken neck and no spilled blood. She'd mentioned that. He didn't recall seeing blood around Trembor's body or indication the neck had been broken, but he'd been paying attention to the lion. He called Jaxka. Marlot, how can I help you? The Red Fox said, smiling as his face appeared on the screen. Marlot hesitated. Did this qualify as breaking the law? It was just a conversation, and he wasn't going to coerce Jaxka into revealing anything. I'm wondering if you can help me with something. Of course. Trembor called you about a body 2 days ago. A coyote, yes. He consulted something, a Mr. Shines. How did he die? Marlot asked, trying to sound casual. Are you and Trembor working together again? Jaxka asked, looking interested. He didn't mention anything about that when I saw him. Marlot sighed. No, I'm just trying to help him. Not a lie, he told himself. Ultimately, this was to get back together. And that was helping the lion. Did he tell you about the falling out we had? No more than you did. I know it happened, but I know better than to pry. Too much of it can cause a predator to forget I'm poisonous until after they've eaten me. I won't eat you, Jaxka, but I appreciate you not prying. I'm hoping that if... Really, why are you highlighting this? Oh, jeez. I'm hoping that if I help him with this, he'll be willing to sit and talk. I want to fix this. Well, you know I'm not supposed to share information between our eyes. I understand. Don't worry about not being comfortable. Don't worry about not being comfortable doing it. Just make sure you don't slip and mention I told you that Mr. Shines died of a broken neck. Snapped? No, the result of a blow. By the shape of the bruising, a strike at the back of the neck. If a fist is the most likely cause, it broke the third and fourth cervical vertebrae. What kind of force does that take? Does it take to do that? Marlot had never broken a neck with a punch. He grabbed and twisted. A reasonable amount, but it's more about precision than strength. So if the killer knows what they're doing, a healthy bobcat could do it. One hit and they've killed. A little smaller than a bobcat could accomplish it if they worked out. And as you said, now that know what they're doing. In this case, they might not have. Mr. Shines has enough bruising. He was in an extended fight. Marlot recalled the mess in the room. Any blood under his claws? No. His killer was adept at not getting slashed. Marlot nodded. That would lean towards training, and potentially smaller than a bobcat. Gave him too many cents to work from. What do you make of trying to avoid spilling of blood? Marlot asked. Jextra fixed his gaze on him. That they don't want to waste any of their meal? He said coldly. Marlot winced. Sorry, I guess that's a tad insensitive. Don't worry about it. It's just something that us, who are looked on as prey, live with. Marlot's stomach rumbled, and Jextra stared at him. It's the talk of meal and prey. Then I'm glad I'm on a screen and not you in person. I'm glad this is a screen and not you in person. I told you, Jextra, I wouldn't eat you. Yes, but I have assistants who aren't poisonous. Marlot tilted an ear. Do you have one who's underperforming? He asked with a grin. Maybe he could score an easy meal today. And that concludes chapter 9 of A Series of Death. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter is going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read the story as well as the other books in the series, they are available at all major e-retailer. If you want a different way to support me, that is on my Patreon, where you can get access to just about everything I've written. And if you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. The links are in the notes. And with that, I shall wish you a good day.